Mr. Deadpool is here, and Marvel's Midnight Suns' first DLC has launched, adding Wade Wilson to the roster, a brand new story, and missions to complete. Let's break down Deadpool, his best abilities, and the DLC as a whole.
Look, Ma, I'm gonna be DLC.
Let me know in the comments if this DLC is bringing you back to Marvel's Midnight Suns. So let's talk about Deadpool himself and how to play him initially. So you unlock the Deadpool missions after you have completed the Spider-Man's main mission from the original base game. Once you've completed that, you'll get a new mission in New York to be able to actually go to and start the Man of Culture mission for Deadpool, and after that you will unlock him to your character roster. Deadpool's unique ability Enfuego is a great way to really increase his damage. So every time that Deadpool KOs an enemy, he will gain a stack of Enfuego for the status effect, and each stack will increase the effect of an ability in a different way. Some of those abilities will just increase the damage, some of them might add extra effects to that card itself, but essentially the more stacks of Enfuego you have, the more powerful Deadpool's ability cards will actually be, and the more stacks you have, then that increase just keeps going and going. And every time Deadpool takes damage, he will lose a stack of Enfuego, so you want to avoid taking damage as Deadpool. This can either be done by having someone else taunt enemies that are focusing Deadpool, or even using one of his cards that adds resist to Deadpool, which prevents him from actually taking damage, because if you are resisting, you won't actually take damage in that turn. So essentially avoiding damage as Deadpool and then dealing damage back is the main thing. His friendship ability, staying alive, will actually increase Deadpool's health recovery, so each turn Deadpool will get a little bit of health back, so if you do take damage, it's not too much of a big deal. But Deadpool is really like a high damage dealing character. The main focus on his abilities is really about dealing damage, getting those Enfuego stacks, and then dealing even more damage by increasing the damage of those effects or dumping heroism into big like damage effects like mag dump, for example, that deal huge amounts of damage. But the main focus here is on damage. He has pretty limited support skills or even like taunt / tanking kind of skills. You're really focusing here on mostly single target with a couple of chain abilities and dealing damage to the enemies themselves. So you'll mostly be using Deadpool to KO the enemies, right? So if you've got other characters, you'll lower their health with them and then finish them off with Deadpool, because he has to KO to get the Enfuego bonuses to increase his overall potential and damage that he can do. So let's talk about his best abilities. The first is Quick Shot. Now, Quick Shot initially is just like a damage skill that is quick. You really want to upgrade this, because once you've upgraded, if the target is KO'd, it will chain to another target. So it'll give you essentially more targets to hit. So you'll get 2 for the price of 1, especially for a quick ability like this. Like quick chain abilities are so powerful, and you can one-shot like minions very easily. It'll also give you that Enfuego stack, so it's a great ability to use. Death from Above is just essentially like a straight damage ability, but the more Enfuego stacks you have, the more damage it'll do. So it's one of the best abilities to use just with high amounts of damage impact without actually costing you any heroism. Boom Headshot is also very similar in that regard, except its damage is static. It isn't increased by your Enfuego stacks. It actually gives you more heroism for your Enfuego stacks. All together now will allow Deadpool to draw additional cards, and if you upgrade this, it will allow your allies, when they KO, to actually increase Deadpool's Enfuego stacks, which is really beneficial as well. And Hey Blank Face is the card I mentioned a little bit earlier that will give you resistance for Deadpool. So say if you use this and Deadpool's going to take damage anyway, it does taunt the target you do hit, but the resistance will prevent you from taking damage and losing those Enfuego stacks. And probably the best damage dealing ability that he does have is Mag Dump. So Mag Dump does a extremely high amount of damage, and the more Enfuego stacks you have, the lower the heroism cost, but that massive amount of damage will help you one-shot some enemies that have like heaps of health in those kind of encounters. The best synergies for Deadpool really is pairing him with some sort of a support hero, someone like a Nico that can remove the heroism cost of something like a Mag Dump, or even increase the overall damage potential that he does have, as well as like a Doctor Strange for the same kind of reasons, increasing your damage potential that you can do with Deadpool, or eliminating the cost of giving you extra card plays. Those are the best kind of characters to pair with Deadpool, and then something that potentially can taunt, say like a Captain America or Captain Marvel, or even a Hulk to some regard. Those characters that can taunt enemies so that you can prevent Deadpool from taking damage is really beneficial as well. But he does kind of fit with anyone for the most part, as like that main damage dealer is what kind of a role he takes in combat. So pairing him with characters that have more flexibility and have some different kind of cards that aren't just mainly about dealing damage is really good for Deadpool, because of the limitations when it comes to his support abilities that are really only really about drawing cards for himself, or even just that brief little taunt that you can do is mostly focused on damage. So having flexibility from your other heroes as well as your combat items are also beneficial beneficial for Deadpool because of the limitations of his support kit. Having some good combat items to use in combat is also beneficial. I did forget to mention earlier, but Infuego is only activated on KOs on Deadpool abilities. So you can't use, say, any environmental attacks with Deadpool to trigger Infuego. You have to actually use one of his abilities to trigger Infuego to increase your stacks. It has to be an ability. You can't use environmental attacks or even shove. You know, I tried all of those and it doesn't seem to work. It only works with the abilities, unfortunately. So let's talk about this DLC as a whole. Now, it doesn't just add Deadpool. It does add some new research linked to Deadpool and his abilities, like the food truck that you can get as well. If you discard a card in combat, you'll gain one move if you have the food truck. It's really just like a passive bonus to put onto your yard once you've researched it. The main addition is really the continuation of the story in some regard, or potentially where the story will go for these DLCs. It very much feels like an intro to the 3 DLCs that are still remaining to come as to where that kind of main story after the fact of the original main story is going to go. It's definitely more of an intro and a bit of a teaser if you have finished the game. I'm trying to avoid spoilers here. I don't want to say anything too specific, but if you have finished the game, there is a bit of like an end credit scene that feels related to what's going to happen in the future with some hints that are given with this DLC. And in terms of the DLC and the story missions, it's actually probably some of the best content in Marvel's Midnight Suns, I think, hands down. Deadpool himself, voiced by Nolan North, is absolutely hilarious, and his writing is really strong. And one of my main concerns that I had with Marvel's Midnight Suns at launch was that some of these, you know, just general scenes where you're just like talking and, you know, around the Abbey, they go really long and aren't super engaging and just not overly interesting over long periods of time. And Deadpool really alleviates some of that because of the humor in his writing, and the way that he's written and just introduced into some of these cutscenes is really hilarious and feels super on brand for Deadpool, and some of the fourth wall breaking that he does. It's
On our left. Careful.
And you be careful. Please, it's been a rough couple of years, and I love you for who you are.
fantastic. I really like the way this is written, and it's very funny and engaging to do, and the combat is just as strong as ever with the new enemies as well that add bleed to the heroes themselves, which is really interesting, these new vampire enemies and the different effects that they can do. So I'm really glad as to how this game has expanded since launch and what seems to be coming and where the story seems to be going after this point is very interesting to me. I'm curious to see where it goes. But if you're wondering if this DLC is worth it or if you should return to Midnight Suns, I actually think you should. I think this DLC is better than a lot of the base game content, especially the introductions to some of the characters in the base game. This is fantastic, and I wish this was in the original game at launch, because I think Deadpool would have added such a core part of the game, but it feels really like he should have been there at the start. But he's fantastic in this DLC, and he feels like a real clear part of the story. You can level him up just like any of your normal friends. You can chat to him, go through all the same stuff that you can with the other heroes, do the Midnight Suns challenge, etc, etc. He's a really good addition to the game, I think, and I'm so glad that he has been added. He's fantastic, well voiced, well written, and absolutely hilarious. Great addition to the game as a whole. I'm really looking forward to see where the Midnight Suns story goes with these extra DLCs. I'll probably be returning to the game throughout the year for the different DLCs. So let me know in the comments down below what you think of Deadpool returning to Midnight Suns, and if you're interested in continuing with this game as the DLCs do come out. Thank you for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.